And so you got to let me know, should I Kirblog about this show? Yes, the answer is 100% very yes. Holy shit. Okay, so first of all, to anybody who has not seen Stranger Things yet, I will not be... I won't be talking about major spoilers, but I will say that you're probably better off in watching this right now if you have access to Netflix, because you're missing something if you haven't seen it already, because holy shit. I finished watching through it about a week ago. I'm recording this like way ahead of time, but this will be going up on Saturday the 27th, time travel. So I finished this a week ago today. My God, wow. It's funny because it started off with when I finished it, I tweeted about how it was life changing, and Martin, little Karibo, was asking like, what was it about it that was so life changing? And maybe that wasn't even the best description. I think it was more so just the fact that like it was so well executed that it just like it hit it was so up my alley and so well done and so well executed that it just really like struck a nerve with me. Like, I don't know, it was not in a bad way. That sounds like it has a negative connotation to it. I described it a lot as like it and we were talking about this with the one I did with Doug a while ago about how like it captured that sense of like childhood wonder, like true wonder. Except in this case, because I was actually kind of expecting it to be mostly focused on the kids and everything. But basically the way that the kind of setup with the show where it's kind of not three different stories. I guess that they are kind of like an A, B, and C plot, but everything is all pretty interconnected, more or less. You could maybe even argue that there's like a D plot in a way, but that has to do with one of the kid characters, and that might even come back into play if the show gets picked up for a second season. But nonetheless, it just caught that true kind of wonder and intrigue about the world from the kids' perspective, and it reminded me a lot of the friendships that I made back then, like the types of friendships that I made with some of which are with people that are still part of my life to this day, and yeah, I think it was just because it was so up my alley, like everything about like the style, the genre of this, and it's funny because I'm not even I guess what would you even consider, because it's not quite like a horror series, and I don't even know if you could consider it to be like a thriller or something. It's supernatural. And even that, like I don't watch a lot of those kinds of shows. I don't watch Supernatural, speaking of which. I don't even know if it's that much like this necessarily. I didn't watch really much of X-Files or anything like that growing up, but yeah, just something about this one. Just what actually what I think it was more than anything is that it was the kid characters. I didn't know about the other three sects in that, well, the three sects in total, and that there was the kids, the teenage characters, and then the adult characters. I knew that Winona Ryder was the kind of major star attached, and she was fantastic. She gave a great, absolutely insane performance, as it should have been. And David Harbour as officer, or Chief Hopper, my bad, not an officer. And all five of the kid actors, all exceptionally talented. Like, I completely bought, because I've seen some other like kid movies where like they'll get kid actors and they're for usually pretty understandable reasons not fully into it or not super all that great or anything, but like all five of these main kids were like outstanding performers. Like everything that was, I fully believed that this was like a really tight group of pals. And not just because of the fact that it was relatable to me and the friendships that I didn't play D&D growing up, sadly. But just like they're kind of dynamic. Like it was completely believable. Even like the couple, this isn't a spoiler because it's in like the first episode, the bully kids, like I bought them too. Like they were like, kids are that mean. It makes sense. They definitely made the show for me. Not to say that the other characters weren't great, and the teenagers, which were probably the easiest characters that could have gone horribly wrong, especially with, when you have teenage romance involved, which, that's also, I'm mostly talking about stuff that shows up in the first episode, so I'm not really divulging much, but it's really easy to screw that shit up, and they handled it also exceptionally well in that regard, and the teenage characters actually turned out to be actually a lot more relatable, I think, than you would expect. Nobody was obnoxious in the story, including the teenagers, which I think can be the most obnoxious if they're written or executed wrong. But and also well, I think the guy who played Jonathan is relatively experienced, but I think that the other three teenage characters, I believe the two girls are like relatively new or maybe even completely new. I'm not sure. I haven't fully looked into what all of them have done, but they were all great. And then the love interest, the love interest guy, Steve. Steve also surprisingly didn't turn out like that. That was the character I was expecting. Like, oh god, I'm gonna hate this guy by the end of the show. I was like, no, I totally get where he's coming from the whole time and makes sense. And yeah, it was funny. Like I think these are actually some of the most relatable, realistically portrayed, not just by the acting, but also just by the reactions that they were written to have based on all the stuff that was unfolding throughout the story. Definitely some of the most well executed teenage characters I've seen in anything in a very long time. If anything, on that same kind of note, actually, what I really liked about the sort of parallel, all three of the different, viewpoints of the world between the kid characters, the teenagers, and the adults, all of their perceptions were treated as incredibly real. None of them felt like they were forced. None of them felt like they were, too, I don't know, they were too forced or whatever. And especially also for it, I didn't grow up in the 80s. So I don't even, I guess maybe older listeners, if there are any out there that have seen this, that maybe, I don't know if there were some inaccuracies in how people were acting back then or whatever. I didn't really care. I loved the 80s style too as well, especially now that since I've been listening a lot more to the radio, just by way of having driven more of living here. I'm glad to say that I've become so much more familiar with all the music from, or not from, but used, I should say, from the 80s, used in this show throughout the whole thing. As evidenced by the beginning. And that was cool because that made that a lot more hey, this is really cool that I'm getting all these kind of 80s hits and everything, and they blend in very well to everything. The very kind of, I guess, okay, so I talked about the childlike wonder from the kid's perspective, which was my favorite part above all else. And then the kind of figuring yourself out and who you are and, what's acceptable and where you're going kind of stuff about the teenage characters. And then finally, the, life is really fucking hard and life is really stressful kind of, not to get too, real about that either. But no, actually, no, not even. That is what it was. It was that it was treated real. The adults' character's perspective and how fucked up everything was, it was perfect. It was so well done. I'm getting over it still. Because I'm recording this the day after I finished watching the whole thing. I just binged through the first half one night and then the next half the second night, and just I was completely sucked in the whole time. And granted, I think that's certainly the point of a lot of these Netflix shows is that they want you to just be so invested that you're marathoning through the whole thing. But I enjoyed Voltron. I didn't binge through Voltron like I did with Stranger Things. The amount of intrigue and the mystery, the thing is also. What I'm happy about is there wasn't a whole lot of to me anyway, a whole lot of predictable stuff. There was certainly some tropey kind of things kind of mixed in there once in a while, but again, the execution of them was so spot on that I never really minded it. Even the romance, which wasn't, the romance stuff was not really at the forefront. It's really just kind of woven in, and it's pretty natural, I would say, by and large. And it never it just never felt like it was too up its own ass or trying too hard or anything. And but yeah, because of that, it didn't come off as, nothing in the story came off as too predictable. Even some of the things that I was able I kind of saw that coming or whatever. It was never oh god, that's such a letdown or whatever. I was into it. I was still into, and I was happy that oh yeah, that happened. That I was kind of maybe thinking would happen or whatever. And it's funny too for the amount of I guess showdowns. You think about bear with me. This is a weird comparison. When you watch an anime with a lot an action oriented anime where there's a lot of battles throughout the story. The show didn't quite have battles necessarily, but it had a lot of like showdowns, like a lot of like major kind of conflicts that a lot of which were kind of unexpected, because like when you go into this, you kind of expect when it's supernatural, like most of what those kind of things are going to be. Again, not to get too into spoiler territory here, but with this one, there were a lot of interesting and very cool kind of showdowns in a lot of different ways. It was it had a lot of really cool variation to it. And again, not even just because of the three different characters' perspectives, but even their stuff was very like everything that very varied. I did a good job on that. Even like the different things that all three of those sects of characters within the story go throughout the 8 episodes, like it's something different every time. It's not like a lot of the same shit or whatever, especially when you think it might be with the supernatural elements integrated into it. You would think that a lot of it probably is like, oh, it's going to be this again, or oh, it's going to be another scene of this or whatever, and it's going to go through the same like stereotypical motions. And to be fair, for me, because I haven't actually watched a whole lot of this type of stuff before, I maybe just because like that, I don't know. I actually kind of wonder maybe before I actually like ask the leave your thoughts thing, I will say just while I'm thinking of it, to anybody out there who watches more like this genre of like supernatural kind of stuff than I do, did this whole did this stack up against how did this show stack up against the other stuff you'd seen, like other movies and TV shows, even video games, maybe stuff like Silent Hill or whatever, if that counts, I guess. Yeah, I'm kind of curious because I do wonder if like people who are kind of more avidly into the genre, like kind of what they think about those aspects of the story in terms of how that goes. But anyway, I think the biggest thing that I really took away from this, and maybe, you know what, actually, yeah, I think that this is the biggest thing that I got into wanting to watch the show, like when I was first kind of hearing about it, because I mentioned this again in the one I did with Doug, but I didn't grow up with the Goonies. And a lot of people were saying that this is kind of like the new Goonies of our era. I don't know if that's necessarily the most accurate, again, because I haven't seen it, so I don't know how that matches. I've heard some people say that it's not quite. It's just people are saying that just because of the group of kids or whatever. But nonetheless, I'm curious to also watch the Goonies, because what I'm drawn to about that and what I was drawn to about the show and what I enjoyed the most and took away from about the show, watching through Stranger Things, most of all the bonds between the group of kid characters, but even more so like further than that, I should say, the bond between the kind of like different sort of bonds between the teenage characters, the different sort of bonds between the characters who are family to each other, which cross between those three different sects as well in different ways. In fact, actually, I would say a certain 3 characters, one from each who are family, and each of those 3 characters are from the kid, teenage, and adult faction, and they all have incredibly important roles in the story to themselves. And seeing their bond with each other, including in some cases when those characters aren't even together at the same time as well. That was really incredible to see how that was going. The teenager ones were very different, I think, compared to everything else, and they needed to be because they were kind of that in-between state. And just seeing like how realistic, how interesting, and how worth it by the end of the story all of those different relationships and bonds between those characters were, was so incredibly satisfying that like many people, I finished it and I was like, more please, I need more of this in my life, absolutely. In fact, I'm very, very excited to see in particular about if they continue forward with this and, they're having, in particular the kid and the teenage characters growing up throughout the course of them doing, further seasons, however many they plan on doing, because I would love to see more and more and more of this as time goes on. I'm assuming, just based on the fact that, not only is it a success, but it's now become a franchise. I would assume that they probably want it to go on for a fair amount of time. However long that ends up being. I know that they're interested in doing a season 2. There hasn't been a flat out confirmation just yet. But I would be very curious to, because it's cool to see. I wasn't ever into stuff like Seventh Heaven or anything, and I don't know if this is the best example, but like a show where you watch the actors and the characters on it like literally grow as the show continues. Because that's like one of the coolest things about with a lot of the anime I watched growing up, like DBZ, watching the characters literally grow old as it went on. And like, actually, a lot of shonen series in particular, in terms of the anime that I watch, that's a really cool factor about, following them for that long of a time. If hopefully they go the route of actually having them, age up over, if they do time skips or whatever. The creators were talking about how, and this isn't spoilerific, thankfully, if they were to do season 2, which they hopefully will, a lot of it would actually focus on the ramifications of what has already happened in season 1, which I'm sure is, if I had to determine, is probably half like the characters themselves dealing with like the emotional and physical fallout of that, as well as kind of what ties into, because there's a conclusion, there's a very good conclusion. So if this was at the end, it would still be totally satisfying. I still want more, but if like something happened and they didn't continue further, I would understand. But either way, there's definitely stuff that's left kind of open, or not even stuff that's left open, but more of just like there's more to be explored regarding a lot of the stuff that was brought up, even that had a beginning, a middle, and an end to it with the characters' arcs and everything. So this is one of those things that I really would love to continue and to see prospering. I think it's really cool. I think it's got a lot, and not only that, it was so well executed, but I think also the reason that I enjoyed the bonds so much between the characters is because I think that in terms of like the messages behind it and like people sticking together and through thick and thin and and trying their best and to not give up, it has a lot of really, really positive messages that I thoroughly fucking enjoyed. And I'm really glad that I got to experience it. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I am a full-on fan of this now. Hopefully, when this comes out, the preview image will be a piece of fan art that I've drawn, because I've been, I don't draw fan art very often, but I just kind of got inspired to want to do some for this, and so hopefully by the time this comes out, I'll have done that and probably put it up somewhere. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this one. A little shorter. Again, I'm trying to get back a little bit more into doing shorter ones. Because this month has been filled with so many long ones, so hopefully that's okay and not too obnoxious to y'all. But anyway, so in the comments below, if you have seen Stranger Things, well, first of all, if you haven't, please do that. Oh my God. If you have, hopefully by this point, come back. Hi, welcome back. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know favorite characters, favorite scenes, favorite episodes, anything. Tag your spoilers. Just like put a big like spoiler in the top or whatever, so people don't actually accidentally scroll down and see stuff. Be careful with your spoilers, everybody. I've been spoiled of other things this week and don't appreciate that too much. Actually, last week, technically. Whatever. Anyway, time travel, whatever. Maybe there will be time travel in Stranger Things Season 2. Oh, God, I hope not. But maybe. We'll see. Whatever. Anyway. Yeah, and then if you have future Kirblog topic suggestions, I have one more planned for this month with a guest. So will probably be a long one. Sorry. But I hope you enjoy it. It's one that actually I've been trying to do for a while. I've got a cool guest for it. Another first-time guest. September will be more of the normal stuff, and then I've got some cool stuff planned after that. But yeah, so if you have suggestions for other Kirblog topics, related to things or otherwise, leave a comment about that too, or hit me up on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, the usual shite. Thanks for listening, and I will catch you all on the upside down.